A few months ago, I was sitting with a group of friends at dinner when the conversation turned, as it often does among people in their 20s and 30s, toward the subject of the future. Someone mentioned moving cities. Someone else talked about applying for a promotion. The tone of the conversation was light and cheerful, full of the kind of plans that make adulthood feel expansive and promising. At some point, the topic of children came up. One of the women at the table laughed and said very matter-of-factly that she and her partner had already decided they would never have children. She explained that they were child-free by choice, a phrase she delivered with the confidence of someone who had said it many times before. A few people nodded with approval. Someone joked that it was the smartest financial decision anyone could make. Another added that children would ruin their ability to travel whenever they pleased. The conversation continued in this direction for a while, and as I listened, I realized that nobody at the table seemed to find the idea unusual in the slightest. The absence of children had become a perfectly ordinary plan for adulthood. This would have sounded very strange to most people who lived even a generation ago. For much of human history, the idea of adulthood contained a simple expectation that people would someday raise children of their own. It was not always spoken aloud since it existed as part of the natural rhythm of life. People grew up, they built households, and eventually, the noise and disorder of children entered those homes. Life moved forward through generations. Today, a different vision of adulthood has become increasingly common. The life many people imagine for themselves revolves around mobility, personal fulfillment, financial stability, and the ability to make decisions without the heavy gravity of long-term obligations. Careers take people across cities and sometimes across continents. Apartments are arranged with careful attention to aesthetics and personal taste. Weekends are filled with dinners, travel plans, exercise classes, concerts, and the quiet pleasures of a life that remains largely under one's own control. Children introduce an entirely different reality. A toddler does not care about a carefully arranged morning routine. A baby has no respect for the concept of sleeping through the night. A 7-year-old has very strong opinions about which socks are acceptable to wear on a Tuesday morning and will sometimes communicate those opinions with extraordinary determination. Raising children rearranges the structure of daily life in ways that few other experiences ever will. Understandably, many people hesitate before stepping into that kind of responsibility. Modern life has become expensive and complicated, and the expectations placed on parents have expanded dramatically. Parents are expected to provide emotional wisdom, educational enrichment, physical safety, and a carefully curated childhood that prepares their children for every possible challenge the future might hold. The responsibility can appear enormous. Yet something interesting happens when the entire culture begins to approach children primarily as an optional burden that clever adults have discovered how to avoid. The conversation slowly shifts from whether people are able to raise children to whether anyone should want them at all. Social media offers countless examples of this shift. There are videos where young couples explain the financial freedom they enjoy through the absence of children. There are posts celebrating weekends spent sleeping late, traveling spontaneously, or maintaining homes that remain permanently clean and undisturbed. Entire communities have formed around the identity of being child-free, sharing the belief that a life without children represents a more rational and rewarding path through adulthood. On platforms like TikTok, the trend has developed its own aesthetic and vocabulary. Videos under tags such as child-free life and dink life, meaning dual income no kids, regularly gather millions of views. Couples film their morning routines in spotless apartments, show spontaneous weekday flights to other countries, or describe the financial advantages of a household where every dollar remains available for travel, dining, or investment. The tone is often playful and celebratory, as though adulthood has finally discovered a clever way to bypass an ancient inconvenience. As writer Jenny is writing vividly illustrates the freedoms of child-free adults, what she calls dinks, double income no kids, stand in sharp contrast to the chaotic reality of parenting. Go out with just your phone and keys. Do you feel that? Oh what? You don't feel anything. Because you're not sumo wrestling out the door with a 25 kilograms pram and 17,000 tiny toy trucks in each hand. Oh yes, freedom. These conversations often center on the advantages of freedom. Freedom to move wherever opportunity appears. Freedom to build a career without interruption. Freedom to spend money on experiences, hobbies, and personal comfort. Freedom is a valuable thing, and few people would argue otherwise. Every human life benefits from a measure of independence and the ability to shape one's own path. At the same time, a life constructed entirely around personal flexibility can gradually become narrower than it first appears. Many of the experiences that shape people most deeply arrive through commitments that restrict freedom rather than expand it. Marriage asks two individuals to align their lives in ways that require patience and compromise. Long friendships endure years of misunderstanding, forgiveness, and loyalty that cannot easily be replaced. Children deepen that experience even further. A child studies the adults around them with astonishing attention. They learn how to speak by listening to the way language flows through a household. They observe how conflict is handled, how kindness is expressed, and how patience appears during difficult moments. A parent eventually discovers that their smallest habits are quietly absorbed by the small people watching them every day. A friend once told me about the afternoon she realized how closely her son had been observing her routine. She walked into the kitchen and found him standing on a chair, carefully stirring water and coffee grounds together in a mug because he had seen her prepare coffee each morning and had decided that he would attempt the process himself. The result covered the counter in a layer of brown granules and produced a drink that would have puzzled even the most generous coffee enthusiast. She cleaned the mess while her son watched proudly, delighted by his own effort. Moments like these rarely appear in cultural debates about children. They are too ordinary and too specific to capture much attention online. Yet these moments accumulate over the years and slowly form the deeper fabric of family life. Children do not remain small forever. They grow, question, argue, laugh, imitate, and eventually develop thoughts of their own. Parents watch this process unfold with a mixture of pride and bewilderment as the small person who once depended on them for everything gradually becomes an individual capable of shaping the world in ways nobody could fully predict. This experience changes people. A person who raises children begins to think differently about time. The future no longer exists as an abstract concept somewhere far ahead. It exists in the form of young people growing up inside their own homes. Across much of the developed world, the number of children being born each year has fallen sharply. In the United States, the fertility rate has dropped to roughly 1.6 children per woman, far below the 2.1 needed for a population to replace itself. Countries such as South Korea, Japan, Italy, and Spain face even steeper declines, with some fertility rates falling close to 1 child per woman. Governments now publish reports worrying about aging populations and shrinking workforces, signs that a generational chain once taken for granted is slowly weakening. For most of human history, this generational perspective formed the foundation of social life. Families carried stories from grandparents to parents to children. Traditions survived through repetition and shared memory. A sense of continuity connected the past with the future. When fewer people imagine children as part of their lives, that sense of continuity slowly fades, and the horizon of life becomes shorter and more individual. At the same time, another cultural shift has quietly appeared. Many adults who once might have directed nurturing energy toward children now lavish extraordinary care and resources on pets. Luxury pet strollers roll through city parks. Dogs celebrate elaborate birthday parties complete with decorated cakes safe for canine digestion. High-end boutiques sell wardrobes for small dogs that rival the clothing collections of their owners. In large cities, it is common to see couples pushing carefully groomed dogs through the streets in carriers that resemble baby carriages, the animals occupying a place in the household once associated with children. None of this means that every person must follow the same path. Human lives unfold in countless different ways, and many people contribute meaningfully to the world without raising children of their own. Yet it remains worth asking what happens when an entire culture begins to view the presence of children primarily through the lens of inconvenience. Children introduce disorder into carefully controlled lives. They consume time, attention, and resources in extraordinary amounts. They interrupt sleep, rearrange priorities, and force adults to think about the long-term consequences of their actions. At the same time, they connect people to the future in a way few other experiences ever will. Others, like Ashaki D, emphasize how cultural and familial influences shape attitudes toward children. She writes about daughters losing interest in motherhood because they fail to see its joy reflected in the women around them. I began to believe that children were a burden, obstacles rather than blessings. No one taught me or reflected to me how worthy, rewarding, and exhilarating it is to devote your body, time, and energy to raising the next generation. Her argument underscores that perspectives on children are not purely individual choices. They are shaped by the examples set within families and society at large. Every generation eventually decides what it values most deeply. Some pursue comfort. Others pursue adventure, achievement, discovery, or creativity. Previous generations often understood that raising the next generation carried its own kind of importance. The children growing up today will someday inherit the institutions, technologies, and cultural habits created by those who came before them. They will shape the world in ways that remain impossible to predict. A society that gradually loses interest in raising children may eventually discover that it has lost something else as well, the habit of imagining the future.
Wow, Michelle. Woo! Ati ulikuwa unapigania maisha yako. Nimekuona ukianguka. Ulianguka mara ngapi?
Mara mbili. Nimejaribu kusimama nasema acheni. Nione watoto wakini-encourage. Nakwambia. Kwanza nimeanguka na nguku kusaidia snow huko mbali. Huko mingi wale watu hawajaslide. I will try now without sharing because actually the worst thing is just when we don't like sense. Also, AB.
Okay.
Okay, maybe we...
Aren't you going on the lift?
Yeah, I'm going to enter for now.
Oh, you're going through. Okay. Let's see you go and then we'll come out.
I know. I will put this thing on this side and then I let it go and then
Yeah. There. Ooh, she got it, yeah.
Professional already.
She's loving it. I love that she's loving it.